This is David Almasi. I'm the executive director for the National Center and the staff director for Project 21. And I've got the pleasure of talking with Jimmie Hollis, who back when he was a teenager and in the Air Force was on leave and was able to go to the March on Washington back in 1963. And just wanted to ask him a couple questions about his recollections and his thoughts about how things are today. So, Jimmie, first of all, what was the most striking memory that you had from that day? What was the thing that you really took from it? Your feelings, your emotions, what you saw and heard. What's the biggest thing from that day that you remember?
Well, one thing, hi David, how are you today?
Okay.
That's great. Glad to do this for. You got to remember, I was a 19-year-old kid at that time, full of hopes and dreams and things like that, and made the trek to from Little Rock, Arkansas, Little Rock Air Force Base, Arkansas, with a friend of mine who has since passed, and we drove up, and the first thing that struck me, David, was the amount of people, and it was extremely crowded. And my friend and I managed to work our way up towards the middle of the crowd, and it was just amazing when he started to speak. It was electrifying. It gave me goosebumps, and it still does today when I hear his speech. So listen intently, and what I took away from that speech was the intensity of his message, which to me was the can-do attitude, the empowering, the uplifting speech, not the victimhood or the downer or you owe me. It was we can do it, you can do it, we can do it, you can become anything you want to. And what he was asking the establishment to do was just get rid of the barriers. You get rid of the barriers and we will get it for ourselves, which is in dire contrast of what it is today, where everyone wants to be a victim and can't achieve anything because for some reason there's someone else holding them down, and it seems to be so easy for someone to claim to be a victim rather to get out there and try hard and do hard. Hey, I made mistakes over the next 50 years in my Air Force career, but I didn't blame it on anybody. I just took my mistakes, learned from them, and just kept on pushing. And I can say, David, without any, without being arrogant, that I did make a success, and I was very, very proud of what I did. And a lot of it has to do with the speech I heard from Dr. King during that day.
So you said like a lot of people, I guess, didn't get the message, whether they weren't there and didn't hear it, but over the years they weren't, I guess, taught the
Well,
message that you got.
the thing is, David, as a lot of the people today that are out there claiming to speak in his name weren't even born during that time. Second of all, they got a lot of information from people who, for one reason or another, want to change or twist Dr. King's message to fit a political agenda. And I can understand why they want to do that. He was a very powerful man. He had a very powerful message. But a lot of the people that I saw there were a little older than I, but there were a lot of 19-year-olds like myself and young people in their 20s, I would say, and a lot of elderly people that was there. And it was just an amazing crowd, but the attitude was different. I saw a lot of people with hope in their eyes, with being empowered, and a lot of tears from people that were getting a message of hope, getting a message of we can do this. And I'm not seeing that today.
Do you think that they accomplished, or that you're going to hear a lot of people, of course, now over the next couple days, and in their analysis of the speech from 50 years ago and what's being said today? Would you be in that the speech accomplished its goals, that the rally accomplished its goals, or that there's still a lot to be done? Do you have an opinion of that?
Well, I think that the speech accomplished what it was supposed to do. I do realize that most of the time, people looking at what they call equality has not quite been reached. But the whole idea is it all depends on how you view that. When you take a look at where we were in the 50s and 60s compared to what we have accomplished even up to this day, Sure, there are problems that exist, but we are far, far, far from where we were back in the 50s and 60s. And what I don't see, and I often question, is why isn't anybody taking a poll or doing a survey on how far we really have come, how much strides we have made. It's always just a negative, what we haven't done, what we couldn't have done. I'd like to see the other thing, and when they do a survey, let's find out exactly where far we've come. And when I look around, especially in the military, and I see all the generals and the colonels, and I look at the CEOs, and I see the entrepreneurs, and I see all these very successful people, black people, and I says, we're more than one step away from the plantation, my friend. But if you listen to some of the race hustlers, it's almost as if we were just only one step away from the plantation. And that's wrong, and that's not true.
Excellent. When you were there, in listening to this speech at the time and listening to all the speakers, did you realize that this was a historic event? I mean, obviously you talked about the tears in your eyes and the tears in other people's eyes, but considering what they're saying today, considering the commemoration of the event, did you realize at the time how important this was and what would probably come of it?
Well, at the time, as I said, I was 19 and just left home for the first time. And I was inspired, but to say that I saw it as a historical event, I probably did not at that time. As the years went by, say 10, 15 years later, as I looked back on that speech, and I saw some of the things that we accomplished, and we were accomplishing, and I knew that this was a very, very essential part of the struggle, so to speak, that we were having. And I do now look back on it. I'm 69 years old now, and I look back on it and I realize how historic it was. It's just to the fact that I wish that it had been commemorated in a much better way along the legacy of what Dr. King did, rather than the twisted political agenda that has been put on us today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know a lot of the stuff this past weekend was they were showing some of the signs, and it was things about gay rights, it was things about unions, it was things about guns, and that's not what you saw 50 years ago.
No, it wasn't. What I saw, in fact, I would say the majority of those people and groups that attended there would have been considered enemies of the black people by Dr. King, because these were the people that continue to try to want to hold us down by making us victims, and we can't do anything without them, or to put us in some kind of perverted sense of justice, and to deny our morality. And as you know, he was a minister first, and what he taught was definitely not what a lot of those groups that attended the other day was all about. And in fact, a lot of those groups that attended there were always anti-family, and King was very pro-family. So it just makes you wonder how the dream has been twisted to the point that it has become what it is today, David, and it's sad. It's really, really sad, and I just wonder, where this is going to lead.
Well, if I could just ask you one more thing, you actually had an interesting, I guess, comparison you can make, that on the 48th anniversary, you were in Washington at the Lincoln Memorial for the Glen Beck rally that he had at the Lincoln Memorial. And I guess you've said to me about the high point of the March 50 years ago, a kind of a low point of the other day with the politicization of the anniversary. Where would you put the Glen Beck Tea Party kind of thing from 2 years ago in amongst that kind of line?
Well, I'll put it to you like this, David. Yes, I was at the Glen Beck rally, and when he played that excerpt from Dr. King's speech, it was quiet. People were very sober. They were listening, and again, I saw people with tears in their eyes, remembering, the power of that speech. Because when you take a look at what the Tea Party stands for, it's the same thing that Dr. King was preaching about the Constitution and living up to the Constitution and doing things that uplift the country and the people rather than tear it down. So yes, it was a very, very good thing with Glen Beck because we thought that was very appropriate. Of course, a lot of people on the left and those who had decided otherwise didn't like that, but that's understandable because there's a totally difference in political opinion. But what happened yesterday to me was a complete travesty, and I really felt sad. And after knowing, what really happened versus what happened yesterday.
Is there anything that, I guess in closing, that if you had some of those people like Ben Jealous or Al Sharpton or Jesse Jackson in front of you and you said, hey, look, you've got one more chance later this week, there's going to be the actual day of, how
Yes.
could they save themselves and save, I guess, the dignity of the anniversary?
Well, to be honest with you, David, I don't think that's possible. I think they're so steeped in their ideology and their agenda that any amount of persuasion by myself or anyone else of a different stripe or opinion is not going to really make much difference to them. They are quite dedicated to their political agenda and what they see. And I'm not saying that it shouldn't be done, that they shouldn't be confronted, but it's just the fact that I think it's really probably a waste of time. I think they've been in it too long.
Well, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk to me about it. I appreciate it, and we're going to make sure people hear about this and understand more about your feelings from 50 years ago from someone who actually was there and who has a conservative viewpoint of it.